But then we have to really let people know that we're not talking about permissiveness, because permissiveness is very disrespectful. It teaches children that I'm the center of the universe and I'm not capable and I can't survive disappointment. So they don't learn to develop their disappointment muscles, and they believe love means getting other people to take care of me. So we need to really avoid parenting. And I love to share the example of the little boy with the butterfly. And what this story goes, that this little boy was watching the butterfly try to break out of the chrysalis. And as he watched that butterfly struggle and struggle, he decided he would help. So he breaks open the chrysalis and is so delighted as he watched that butterfly fly off into the sky. But then he watches in horror as it falls to the ground and dies. And what happened? The butterfly did not develop its muscles so that it could survive, so that it could fly. And that is our job, is to help children develop their disappointment muscles, their problem-solving muscles, so that they can develop the perception that I am capable. And so what do? We come up with lots and lots and lots of different tools that all help children develop what they need. So I do want to share the 5 criteria for positive discipline. It's respectful, it's both kind and firm at the same time. And it helps children feel belonging and significance. It's effective long-term, not just short-term, like punishment and rewards. And here we get to the social-emotional. Does it teach children valuable social and life skills for good character? And does it invite children to discover how capable they are and to use their power constructively? Now, every single positive discipline tool has to meet all of these criteria. So let's just talk for a minute about kind. That is what helps children feel belonging and significance. No, belonging. That's what helps them belonging. Firm is what helps them feel significance, the responsibility, the capabilities. So this is why they have to be balanced. That's why we need to have both kind and firm. So I love this example. I love it when I can find cartoons that show the example. Here the mom is saying no, and the little boy says yes, and she says no, and he says yes. She picks him up and gives him a hug. And she says no, and he says okay. And then he says, a hugging no is no fair. Isn't fair. But the truth is, sometimes children aren't ready for a hug, but when they are, it can just change things so much. I know that my children have used it with their grandchildren so often, so they just say, I need a hug, and the children will say, okay, 9 out of 10 times. So here is where we get to the children under 3 specifically, and how important it is to understand child development and age appropriateness. And that children do not understand no the way you think they do. Because I always ask, how many of you have seen a child just look back at you and defy you as they go to touch something they know they're not supposed to touch? It's because they are little scientists, little explorers. That's what really does help their brains develop. So, and if you really understand child development age appropriateness, you don't, I like to do the Piaget demonstration. And since I can't demonstrate it here, it is when you take 2 balls of clay that are exactly the same, and you smash one flat, and then you ask the child first of all, you say, are they the same when they are the same? But when you make one flat, the child does not know they're still the same. They think that the round ball is bigger because they just can't conserve in that way, or whatever the word it be called. And the other example I like to give of this is one mother told me, she said, I have to spank my child to teach him not to run in the street. It's a matter of life and death if I have to teach him. And I said, well, okay, let me ask you this question. After you have spanked your child to teach him not to run in the street, will you now let him play in front of a busy street unsupervised? And she says, well, no. And I said, well, what if you spank him 100 times? Now that you've spanked him 100 times to teach him not to run onto the street, will you now let him play in front of a busy street unsupervised? And she asked us, well, no. Why not? Because in some instinct, she knows that this child has not developed judgment and the kind of responsibility to be safe. And so this is what's so silly, that sometimes if parents really thought about it, they would know that they're not really teaching their child. So I have, what are the main, let's see, this.
If I can butt in, from my perspective, very often the punishment is just the feeling of helplessness. The parent feels, or the caretaker feels, that I need to do something, and this punishment is, it's like available at hand. So that's why we very often do it, because we have no other tools.
Yes, I am so glad that you pointed that out. I'm sorry, I thought I had turned that off.
That's okay. We will cut it out.
Okay. What you're saying is just so important, and that's why we have to do these kind of conferences to teach parents and teachers that, because when you punish a child, that child is more likely to run into the street looking to see if you're coming instead of to see if a car's coming. This is just why it's so important at this age, that this is what they, under the age of 3, but here's the main tools you use with children under the age of 3. Supervision, and some distraction, and some redirection, and those really aren't the only tools, but they are the main ones. And there are ways to distract, there are ways to redirect, just like the example I gave of the child who has bitten another child. But it's interesting that the minute they turn 4, something happens in that brain where they are just the best problem solvers. And that's why by the age of 4, you want to get them involved in family meetings and class meetings where whenever there's a problem, you ask the kids what the solution would be, because they're so good at it. But with children under 3, they just need more distraction, limited choices. It's time to leave now. Do you want to hop like a bunny or swing your arms like an elephant tail? So elephant's trunk. So, but always being both kind and firm. And the other thing is to teach without expecting understanding. And what I mean by that is, so you take this child and you're walking on a busy street and you come to a corner and you say, look up the street and tell me when it's safe. Look this way and tell me when it's safe. So you're starting to teach them to think about those things, but you still don't let them go by themselves until they're much older. It's the same as teaching them how to share. It's like, what are the things you want to share and what are the things you don't want to share, and how can you, if you don't want to share, how could you maybe find that child something else or use a timer? But sometimes we expect children to share and blame them and shame them if they don't, even when we as adults don't always want to share everything. So we're always teaching. So let's go back to Erik Erikson's developmental stages. Birth to 1, they're developing trust versus mistrust. And this is even before, this is the pre-verbal. So it's just a sense of trust or a sense of mistrust. And this is why it is so important at this first age that they get a lot of that connection, a lot of that attachment, it's called, even though Adler was the first to call it belonging, and now it's called attachment. And it is the primary need. And so children need a lot of this feeling of attachment to develop that sense of trust. And between the years of 1 and 3 is when they're developing autonomy or doubt and shame. I didn't put doubt and shame, but it's doubt and shame. And this is what are they developing when we punish them?
Doubt and shame.
Not initiative or not autonomy. It's the 3 to 6 that they start developing the sense of initiative versus guilt. And this is one of the reasons why, I like this one. A child who's sitting in timeout in this way, facing the corner, what are they developing?
Shame.
Autonomy or doubt and shame? Doubt and shame, of course. And, then parents say things like, you sit in the naughty chair. Not even, they're deciding, I must be naughty. Or you think about what you did, which is one of the dumbest things you can say to a child, because they're not thinking about what they did, they're thinking about what you did. So this timeout, which is one of the most popular discipline methods, if it's done in a shaming, blaming way, is just not effective. But in positive discipline, we call it positive timeout. And what we do is we get the kids to help create it. Now, often children under the age of 3 are still maybe too young. When they maybe 2.5, I've heard some people, 3-year-olds. I've heard some parents say, and teachers say it works, but they get to create a place that helps them feel better, that helps them learn to calm down and access their rational brain. So then you let kids decide what to call it. They get to call it whatever they want. And they can call it their feel-good place, their cool-off spot, space, sparkles. And then you don't send them. You ask, would it help you to go to your feel-good place? I wanted to show you, this is what one preschool did. They created a stuffed grandma that children could go sit on her lap if they wanted to feel better. Because the idea of positive timeout is for social-emotional, for self-regulation, to teach them that it's okay to go to a place where they feel better. But if you say, you don't say you go to your timeout until you feel better, that's still punitive. You would say, would it help you to go to your timeout? And they might say no. Then you say, would you like me to go with you? And why not? You probably need it too. And if they still say no, say, well, I think I'll go to my timeout because I need to wait till I feel better, so you model it. But I just love this for younger children rather than so against that punitive timeout that is blaming and shaming. And sometimes just waiting until they feel better is enough, but sometimes you might need to ask them, so, what happened? What do you think caused it to happen? What could you do to solve the problem? And as they get older, to put the problem on the family meeting or class meeting